I remember definitely feeling my pulse racing a little bit there, that I was perhaps touching a stove that was a little too hot for my liking that time, and I was very happy to get picked back up. It all worked out. We have nice stories. We're doing a podcast. Everybody could have a laugh. But I remember thinking at the time, I can never say anything about this because I think we probably flew a little close to the sun that day. Dude, it was wild. I've probably gone on a dozen ride-alongs in my life. It's important for people to kind of get a feel for what you guys are all about. The goal is to be the fly on the wall, and so you're kind of experiencing what you guys deal with. I'm very thankful for those experiences. It was great, and I kind of wish we could do them again sometime. But I think a lot of people could benefit, and I know that's the purpose of the ride-alongs in the first place, was to sort of show citizens what it's really like. It's real dudes. And certainly ladies, of course, but doing a lot of good work out there, and doing a lot of noble causes, and it doesn't get talked about hardly at all, and that's a shame. Stinking Troy Aikman, man. Every time he's perfect, and Favre would throw a couple picks, and that felt like the difference to me. Is deep down, it's like, I know Favre is better than Aikman. I can tell you. I mean, I'm looking at the highlights; he's better. And then you're like, but he can't do it. Like, Troy Aikman was like the boogeyman. Not Aikman, or it's not Emmett, not Michael, not Dion, not Charles Haley. Aikman. That's why I think it's important, even when it's not popular, to be willing to, defend the huge majority that are absolutely, trying to do things the right way. The other thing is just a simple empathy of understanding the type of pressures, and I don't mean pressure from the media or pressure from the populace for your conduct or anything like that. I'm talking about the pressure of literally not knowing if you're going to be shot.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
Welcome back, ATO fans. I'm Joe King. I'm with Randy Aguilar. And today we have a very special guest co-host, Dallas homicide detective and my first partner, not my life partner, my first partner on the streets, John Valdez. John, thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome.
Almost a life partner.
Almost, yeah. Today's story is different from our other stories. Today we're sitting down with a truly genuine and incredible human being. Not because of his incredible sports mind or his ability to dissect an NFL draft, or because of his insane hockey knowledge, or the fact that he's an active member of the 4-time Marconi winner, radio station of the year, The Ticket. But because of this man's incredible faith and the fact that a mission trip to Guatemala helped him find his new why in life, I can honestly say this man is much more than just a big sports nerd. Our guest is much, much more than this. Much more than a recognizable voice on an iconic radio station and a radio show called the Hardline. Growing up in Cheesehead land and attending Liberty University, he got an amazing opportunity from an announcer known as the voice of the Flames, Jerry Edwards, to dip his toe into the radio broadcast waters. Then he jumped in the sports radio ocean as he moved to Dallas, Texas in 1998 to work for the Little Ticket. For years, he has honed his craft with partner Dan on Bad Radio. He garnered several nicknames. The Sturminator, Sports Sturm. He's definitely not the guy in the next cubicle over. It's my honor to welcome on one half the Ticket's Hardline, the great Bob Sturm.
Dang.
Bob, thank you.
Jeez, Joe.
Why are you misty-eyed?
That's incredible, man. I didn't realize I was going into Cooperstown here. That's amazing.
Yeah, well.
Thank you.
Don't worry, nobody listens to us anyway.
Well, it's great to be with you guys. This is exciting.
We're going to get into a lot of different topics. We're going to talk about your early life, and a lot of the Ticket listeners know, but there's going to be a lot of civilians that listen across the country that they don't know the Ticket. They've never heard of it, but after hearing Reiner on, I had several people reach out and said they started listening to the Ticket.
Oh, that's cool.
They don't even live in the state, so It's really cool. But you ready to dive into it?
Yeah, man. You know what though? I was gonna. My wife asked me when I said we were doing this. She said, "How'd you ever meet Joe?" And I have to tell you, I don't remember. But I feel like we've known each other maybe since the '90s, but I couldn't even tell you. So
I'll tell that.
How
story.
did we meet?
You're
going to package it for later?
I'm going to package it for later.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're going to get into our.
I need to know the answer of how I met you because I don't remember.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna tell you when we get into our iconic first ride along.
Okay, great.
You've done 2 ride alongs with me, and they were.
Why did we stop at 2? I had so much fun.
Yeah, well, I'm off the streets now, so
Yeah.
But yeah.
Probably best.
And it's probably best now. Policing's different now.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you would probably have to wear a vest now riding out. So you almost needed to wear a vest with us.
I was definitely right on the borderline of should I be or should I not be here because I kind of feel like I should be, but again, more on that in a bit.
Right. Well, speaking of that, your wife Sally, she actually said that Bob goes, "Oh my God, I was so scared." During the ride.
No, it was real. So my wife, I always say this, and I don't think it's hyperbole. I think if every member of my wife's family who is in law enforcement showed up at the holiday in their uniform, I think we'd probably have double-digit cops and detectives and federal officers and so forth. We would have 10 or so at Christmas. Like her whole family. And this is how we were raised. I've known her forever. There's a picture of us when we were both 5. We were definitely not dating at the time. But she grew up in that world, and we went to a real tiny school, a little tiny private school. And so I always knew her family. Her dad literally swam the Rio Grande to get to America, and then became a police sergeant for like 40 years up in Wisconsin. So it's just like the American dream stuff. And 2 brothers are cops, 2 in-laws are cops. Her uncle is a detective. His son is, and so it just goes on. And now her brother has 2 sons who are also now Madison cops. So if you ever run into a Madison, Wisconsin police officer, there's a good chance I know him because it's my wife's family, seemingly in many respects. So obviously I appreciate what you guys do and what you're asked to do and just all that. So when people always say if you weren't sports nerding for a living, what would you be doing? And there's no question I found law enforcement and that sort of this is funny because you guys could actually verify this or not. I perceived growing up that I did not want a job that felt monotonous.
Yeah.
I was scared of cubicle life, if you will, or just doing. And a lot of people do it, and that's great. And
somebody's got to do it.
Somebody's got to do it. I didn't want to do it. I have an attention span problem probably, and this job was perfect for it because every week there's something different in the sports
especially
world.
In this town.
And if you love every sport like I seem to, then the changing of the seasons brings you a whole new team that you haven't thought about in a couple months. It's really fun, and there's no end to that. But I thought perhaps what her dad and uncle and brothers were doing seemed like it it wasn't a monotonous type existence. It felt like every day would be somewhat different. Now I'm sure they begin to follow certain patterns and so forth, but that was really the draw to me, is just seeing. First of all, it seemed like a great calling, and then second of all, it didn't seem monotonous. So that was why I thought if I didn't do this, I would try to be doing that. Although I don't think you guys take many recruits who are 50.
No,
We used to.
We used to. No, you would be a very intimidating police officer, Bob, with the 6'5",
6'4", pretty
6'4",
much. Yeah. Especially
bald.
since I shaved my head, I
Yeah.
got back to 6'4".
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice Fletch reference.
Yes. Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you.
No, it's basically service, Bob. Right?
Yeah.
It's service,
100%.
and I believe that the things that you've done, being on the ticket and being in radio and being an expert, and I mean, really, you may not call yourself an expert, but there's a reason you analyze games and break games down for the great Troy Aikman. But I believe you have a servant's heart. And I don't know if that, and we're going to get into that with your personal life.
Sure.
I think that your faith and your servant's heart is even bigger than your radio persona.
That's very nice of you to say. I strive for that. I hope it's true.
No, it's true. We've known each other since '98.
Yeah.
I think that's when you did the first ride along.
I think so.
And it was right before the bad radio started.
That's right. Okay.
Because you were on nights.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember
leaned into a dumb criminal segment or something like that, or Darwin Awards or whatever we were doing back then.
Yeah.
I'm like 25. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's been a while, huh?
It's been a little bit.
We were younger then.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to start from the top.
Sure.
You grew up in Wisconsin. Can you describe growing up the Wisconsin life?
Jeez. I guess we all have different versions of it, but a pretty small town outside Madison, and then a pretty small private school. My parents were extremely religious, so when people think I'm extremely religious, they don't have any idea what they're talking about. I grew up in a real conservative setting that when you're a kid, you just kind of go along with whatever you're told to do, and so the cool thing about going to a real small school is that you can excel in sports really easily. Like, they're begging you to go out for the team, and if you have any talents at all, you're going to play the whole game, and it's going to be really fun. So that's different than what my boys have to deal with in Coppell, where you pretty much have to be a candidate for the draft to make some of the high school teams here. It's legit, and so they miss out on a lot of the sports camaraderie that I enjoyed. But the quick childhood story that I guess explains how you come up with Sports Frankenstein when he's 50 is my parents kind of followed the tone of the day on the pretty conservative side of the road, and that was that TV is evil. TV in our homes is going to rot all of our brains and bring society to a halt. If you're watching Dukes of Hazzard or The Love Boat or something,
the Fall Guy,
or Chips, which by the way was very influential in my house. Chips, Ponch and John, come on, but not so much Dukes of Hazzard. Roscoe didn't seem to represent law enforcement quite like
we'd hope not.
Have you guys done a series on TV shows representing law enforcement? That might be a good idea at some point.
That's a good hey.
I bet we could have a whole talk about movies.
Yeah.
And what's realistic TV shows,
Sure.
movies, and have a good conversation about that, because there's a lot of
no doubt
good ones and a lot of bad ones.
No doubt.
Probably more bad than good.
We're going to get into the wire talk later.
Okay, cool.
And that is
absolutely.
we're going to talk about our opinions of that show.
Real quick, going back to your high school, you said it was I grew up from a really small high school out in West Texas too. How many people did you graduate?
7.
Look, I've never met anybody that graduated fewer than me. I had 26 in my class, so I've never met anybody's fewer than me.
All right,
that's
let
amazing.
me hit this one right out of the park by telling you a little factoid about that 7. One girl, and you just met her.
Holy crap! Wow!
I graduated with one girl.
Wow.
I got so much to say, but I
The great
6-1.
Sally Sturm.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So she's a.
I've never met anybody that had been to a smaller school than me.
your height must have helped.
Well, yeah, I guess I don't know.
Were
I
you,
mean,
were you
I
always
had-
a big kid? Were you
Yeah,
side-
but I had horrible hair. So David Letterman hair is like a high school guy. So you know.
Well, now you don't have to say that's a problem. You just
Honestly,
shave it
no.
off.
You know what? I wouldn't change a thing on that front, except for real sunny days where I gotta be hat guy all the time. But so basically, we didn't have a TV, or we did have a TV, but it was locked up.
Wow.
And the rule, and dude, I remember this when I was like 5. The TV was locked up except for sports, like not even cartoons.
Now, was that because was your dad a sports fan, and that was
No, I just don't think he saw, or maybe he realized I was really into sports and made an exception. I don't know, but again, the tone of the day, at least in the church we went to, which I thought, you know, look, I think everybody who knows anything about me knows I take my faith seriously, but I also realize a lot of people who are in religion and who say they have a faith have absolutely lost the plot and kind of gone off the deep end at times in various directions. And I kind of think I was probably raised in one of those churches. Lots of well-meaning people, but the premise that TV, you know, right down to like Bugs Bunny is the downfall of society is just flat out ridiculous, in my opinion. And I mean, Bugs Bunny's awesome. And so the rule at the house, though, from probably age 5 to, I don't know, age 12, was that the TV can be used for sports. And so, and that's exclusively. So if
I'm surprised there's one in the house.
Yeah.
well, it was a little 13-inch black and white, you
Wow.
know. But doggone it, it didn't take me long to figure out that I want to watch every Packer game and every, you know, Brewers game and everything that was available, because honestly, as a kid, you just are mesmerized by the screen. I mean,
it's visual stimulation.
yes,
I mean, you know,
hand
yeah.
any 1-year-old your phone for a few seconds, and you'll see how obsessed they become with whatever's on the screen.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it is just a human reaction to the light and sound and whatever it is that's the moving objects on a screen. So I'm not saying I was particularly keen on football at the time, but I do think that formed me into a sports nerd. So that's the quick description of growing up, how I did, and how does a guy like you know, when people ask me, how'd you end up like this? How'd you end up knowing as much about sports as anyone they've met? And by the way, there are bigger sports nerds than me, so I don't want to make that some bold claim. But yeah, I was ready to host a sports talk show, knowledge-wise, when I was probably 15 years old, just because that's all I cared about, you know, is the stats.
That was your life,
figures.
as far as
Sports Almanac, I tried to memorize it. Like there was, you know, there's a time where if you could pick a year between like 1975 and the year 2000, I might be able to name you every champion in every sport. You know, just because that's, don't call my bluff. It's too early in the morning.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
But you know, that's what we would do, and so
It's amazing.
it's, you know, thankfully, because sports talk radio didn't exist in 1972 or 1975 or, you know, any year of my childhood. Sports radio started happening in the late 80s. There was a Sports Illustrated article. I remember reading this in high school. You know, what's that opening section of SI when we were kids? I forget what they call it, like point after. No, that's the one at the end. Whatever it was. They would have little small capsule stories, and one was that the first all-sports radio station is going on the air in New York, WFAN. And they're actually going to talk about sports 24/7. And I read that, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. How do I get access to this radio station? This sounds like the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. And, you know, by the time I'm in college, now they're starting to pop up everywhere, including Dallas. And, you know, if you ever read the book Outliers, which I think is a book everybody should read.
I didn't check that out.
By Malcolm Gladwell, a big part of success in life is the dumb luck of being in the right place at the right time.
It's cop work sometimes.
Yeah, and I think
Yes.
I think graduating from college in 1994 is the perfect year for anyone who wanted to do what I do for a living, because all these stations are going on the air. They all need talent, and they all need people that have nothing but sports nonsense in their heads, and Gordon and other people. But
Yeah, he's an outlier.
There was an opening for me, and now people in subsequent years are like, hey, I'd love to do what you do for a living. The problem is we were all like 20 in 1994 or 1992, and so we haven't aged out. Like, the conveyor belt of adding new people is very difficult because most people in my profession are about my age because all the stations went on the air at about the same time. So that's honestly blessing, luck, however you want to call it, from my parents locking up a TV to getting out of school and a place like the Ticket goes on the air and a bunch of stations like it. I've lived this charmed life where I've never been fired. I've never, really switched jobs even. It's
Right.
just I've always kind of been able to just slide right into a chair and do my thing and watch football.
Well, you're doing what you love. I mean,
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
I work hard. There's no doubt. And I work ridiculous hours, but I never work.
It's all fun.
Yeah,
I mean, it's fun. I mean,
like yesterday I spent, hours and hours on the New York Giants, and
in the Nolan Ryan segment, which is amazing.
and then I did a talk show with a bunch of buddies, and so that was my day. And to me, learning about the New York Giants and what they did this offseason and what their new plans are and about their new coach and all that stuff gets me out of bed. It's fun.
Yeah.
I love to follow all these male soap operas we call sports.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we got plenty of soap operas here in Dallas.
We sure do.
And it's
We
not,
sure do.
It doesn't involve J.R. Ewing and Bobby Ewing. It's
No.
the Joneses.
Are you going to follow, anything on Zach Wilson?
Well, so
I don't care about his football stuff.
I'll get to the Jets for sure, and his offseason has really been something as well. But yeah, of course. I mean, at the Ticket, that sort of things move them to the front of the line.
I want to get into the Packer fandom growing
Sure.
up. And what was that? I mean, once you started watching them on your 13-inch and then become a fan, what was that like as far as other people that live in Wisconsin? That I know, I've been down there several times,
Right.
And I know what that team means to that entire state.
Yeah, it's funny though. I was born at a time where they started being really awful for a really long time, and so I remember going to school early on and realizing that none of these kids liked the Packers that much. And I think the Bears might have attracted them. I think the Cowboys might have attracted them. But all the young lads in my class or in the adjacent classes in grade school, I got the sense that none of them were really into the Packers because the Packers were awful. And I don't know how that works, because you would think there would be some residuals from the Lombardi years in the 60s. Where,
Tattletale.
Yeah, but by the time I got there, and the first, I clearly remember John Brockington as the running back, and that means that I was taking note of players' names when I was 4.
Wow.
And that seems a little psycho to me looking back, but it's true. And so between the year I was born and my 20th birthday, they never had a playoff season except the 1982 strike year. And I don't really count that. I don't know if anybody should count the 1982 strike year. They only played 9 games. Doesn't count. So my entire childhood, they lost every year. Bart Starr was their coach, Packer hero. Mm-hmm. They were awful. Forrest Gregg, they were awful. Just going through the whole paces. But I don't know. I guess I fell in love with the colors or the symbol or just the idea that it's our team. It's not Chicago's team. It's our team. It's up here with us, and that for whatever reason that was attractive to me. I loved Lynn Dickey, who was the Kansas State quarterback that they had, and James Lofton has a massive place in my heart, and I've got to know him a little bit as an adult, which is
that's cool.
Which is really weird that Sidney Moncrief and James Lofton know who I am, and it's just it's one of the cool things about your childhood and your adulthood sort of tying together. But I always loved them. I never believed they had a chance to be really good. Like a successful Super Bowl year would be making the playoffs, literally when it was like Don Mikowski and that
Magic Man.
Yeah, and we got to a point where me and my buddy could go up there for training camp practices, and we would, do the bike thing with the players.
That's really cool.
And
Can you explain that for the listener that they don't know? What
Yeah.
camp for the bikes?
So the Packers train basically 2 parking lots over from their locker room. At least back then. I know they've put a lot of money into things now, but the Green Bay Packer training camp, unlike the Dallas Cowboys, which, by the way, advantage Cowboys. Their training camp is glorious out in California, but the Packers was in their parking lot and or across their parking lot to the practice fields, and so it was a really long walk. It was like 500 yards, and so for whatever reason, once upon a time, players would borrow like kids' bikes to ride from the locker room to the practice field and then back. And so kids would start bringing their bikes and offering them to players, and then players would ride their bike, and the kid is holding their helmet running alongside. And so once word got out that was happening, are you kidding me? Like it's the Pied Piper. Every kid in Wisconsin is trying to get their bike up to Lambeau Field so that some player might ride their bike and, of course, crush it because he weighs 300 pounds. But just that experience. They sort of try to keep it alive even to today. But I do feel like my whole childhood, again, until I was 20, they were so bad that it kind of was my team. Like I didn't have to share them with anybody.
Because nobody else wanted them.
Because no one else wanted them.
Yeah.
And so now Packer fans are insufferable, entitled, annoying, and all that. And that's the generation after me. I think my generation is grateful for every good season. And, we remember and we know how quickly a little village like Green Bay can become completely irrelevant in the NFL. So, yes, people are like, you guys are so spoiled, Favre and Rodgers. How do you only won 2 Super Bowls in 30 years. I'm like, 2 Super Bowls in 30 years? Do you know how insane and how impossible it is to win 2 in 30 years?
Yeah.
Like, we're not the Patriots, but if you would have told me as a kid that every 15 years I was going to average a Super Bowl victory, I would have signed up for that in a heartbeat. That was impossible.
We'll take that in Dallas right now.
Yes. And so, it's a love affair that, I heard somebody say this, and I've stolen it, but your favorite sports team is the only thing that you will feel the same about when you're 5 and when you're 75. And I really believe that. Like if it could be your college, it could be whatever that team is that you think about when you should be thinking about something else, that has a relationship with you that hopefully stays with you as other things come and go, like the love of money or your interest in women or just whatever. I mean, things fluctuate by age, right? I'd like to think I'll still feel that way about a sports team, the whole way through. I won't become jaded like many in my business, but I got the tattoo. I got a son named Brett. I mean, I work now, so it does make it weird, and I don't like it when the Cowboys and Packers play because then work me and free time me have to have this weird relationship for the week, and all the people out in Radio Land know, we know what you really want to have happen. Honestly, I don't know that I agree with them, even though it makes intuitive sense, because my relationship with the Packers is very similar to everyone's relationship with whatever team they like. My relationship with the Cowboys is I know these guys. The coaches, the people that work in the business office, and many players, I actually have built up a relationship with them like you and I have, where man, how you doing? What's going on here? How you feeling today? Like Jason Witten is a really good friend of mine. Dan Campbell, some of these guys we've had relationships. I've been lucky enough to call them friends, and of course, the Troy thing is well after his career, so that one wasn't quite the same. But the point is, if you know somebody personally, it's different than having a favorite team. And so when people are like, you don't even care if the Cowboys win. Bro, I care probably more when that their families are happy because
you have
they
a
don't
connection.
get fired and they don't get cut or something like that. I mean, it's a way different and more special relationship to actually know people. It's not. I guess people people get it, but it's that deal where it would be best if they would just never play. That would be nice for me because they like the Des catch thing. There are still people that hate my guts because they know deep down inside I was happy at the end of the day when they were crushed. And honestly, when they play each other, I go into this trance. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it at all because I'm so grateful to P1s for making my life possible that I'm not going to dunk on them, because some ref doesn't make a call, It's just, like I said, well, you know what? The Bucks and Mavericks are great because they're in different conferences and they'll almost never meet. That's perfect. I wish the Packers and Cowboys could be like that. But every year it feels like the Packers and Cowboys play each other at least once, if not twice. Sometimes.
Okay, the Cowboys.
It must have been torture though back in the '90s when they were actually in the playoffs together. That must have been torture.
Well, it was, and I'll tell you something. What's hilarious about that is the Troy Aikman element where.
Oh, I can't wait to get
where we are jumping around. But
no,
hopefully
it's fine.
That's okay.
No.
So yes. So the Packers, when I was 20, started getting good. They got, of course, Brett Favre, and they started actually being a team that could do some things. But these Cowboys are this mighty machine who just look like, the final villain in the movie, where you're just not going to beat the big boss here at the end of the movie. There's just too much. There's too much firepower. You just don't beat them. That's
God, I missed that.
And then every year the Packers would play them twice, and it would be at Dallas regular season, and then at Dallas in the playoffs because the Packers would never get home field. That's ridiculous. We're barely a wild card team, and so in '92 and '93 and '95 '93, '94, '95. The Cowboys and Packers would always be on a collision course, and we'd get beat, and it was just this deal where the stinking Troy Aikman, man, every time he's perfect, and Favre would throw a couple picks, and that felt like the difference to me. Is I deep down it's like I know Favre is better than Aikman. I can tell you. I mean, I'm looking at the highlights. He's better.
Settle down.
And then you're like. But he can't do it. Like you're going into the game. You're like, finally, he's gonna rise up and beat this guy. And then Aikman would not make any mistakes. No interceptions, no fumbles, and maybe not as many yards, and maybe not as many touchdowns. But sometimes he would. And then it even got worse. Like Aikman's injured, and here comes Jason Garrett on Thanksgiving Day, and Jason Garrett is lighting you up. And so it was torture. And so
at least you wasn't working here, though.
No, I wasn't.
So that's good.
But it was really funny because to be fair, Troy Aikman was like the boogeyman. Right. Not Aikman, or it's not Emmett, not Michael, not Dion, not Charles Haley. Aikman was in my kitchen. Right. And so, I'm a college student, and I'm like, I can't stand this guy. I can't believe how overrated he is. I can't believe, just how everyone just kisses his butt and just all this stuff. And I remember, everyone has an athlete like that where it's like, I can't stand this guy. In fact, many people down here, it's Aaron Rodgers. Right. And so,
absolutely.
So I made him out to be this Darth Vader presence in my life or something. And then, of course, over the course of working for the ticket, you start to meet him, and you're like, man, this guy's so cool. I can't believe how nice he is.
Does he know this stuff?
Yeah.
You've talked to him about this
stuff?
Yeah,
well, in fact, we had a really awkward time at the quarterback bowl. So we played at Reunion Arena, a flag football game. And our team had, I think, Troy, Moose, Herschel, and maybe Drew Pearson. And the other team had Roger and, Tony Dorsett and Michael Irvin and whoever was on the other team, said Jay Novacek. It was just so cool to have, like, Cowboy Ring of Honor guys all over the field. And then, like, me and Rhines and Corby and Junior and all these guys are filling out the flag football roster. And
the real athletes.
Yes, and so I'm playing center.
Yeah.
And I remember shotgun snaps to Troy, and Herschel Walker was like lined up across from me, and I'm supposed to like one-on-one pass protect against Herschel Walker. Yeah. It was hilarious, but it was also this out of body experience for like, that's Herschel Walker, that's Troy Aikman. What am I doing between them? And my wife's sister was always a Cowboy fan. So, there's always a contrarian in every family, right? And she loved the Cowboys, and she loved Troy Aikman, and just, make you crazy when the teams would play. But enough time had passed. The Cowboys at the time were being coached by Campo. Aikman's long retired.
Yeah.
Let me get my sister-in-law an autographed football from Troy. This is kind of cool. So I remember after the quarterback bowl, I walk over to Troy. He, again, nicest guy. And I hand him a football, and I say, "Hey, could you sign this for my sister-in-law? She's a really big fan." And yeah, sure. So he grabs it, and what's her name? And to Susie or whatever. And I said, "Yeah, she even thinks you're better than Brett Favre." And then he doesn't say anything. He just keeps writing, and I realized what I had just done, and I'm like, "And so do I," and took the ball feebly back. I felt 2 feet tall, and I should have because I got too comfortable. And so that was like 2003 or 2 or something like that. And then, over the course of time, we'd get to know each other and occasionally cross paths. He, I think, was part of the Dallas Super Bowl committee. So when the Super Bowl was maybe in Miami or something, he had a boat, and for whatever reason, a bunch of us media guys went out there with Troy or something, and that was fun. But in 2016, he called me, he had a Cowboys official call me and say, "Hey, Troy would like to meet with you," and I'm like, "Geez, this is very formal," and so I said, "Yeah, sure." So it was like 2 weeks before the season started, and he can meet you at Cowboys practice. Okay. And so I walk into the Ford Center where they have the indoor practice now. And the guy's like, "Okay, so he's right over there." And it's across the field, and it's one guy, and it's Troy Aikman sitting there. So now I'm walking all the way around.
He's got a pistol sitting on the table. Yeah.
And I'm seriously trying to figure out, what have I said? What is he going to scold me about? Or is he going to ask, Dan to stop doing something through me? Or who knows what's going on here, right? And basically, "Hey, Troy, how's it going? Hey," he asked me if I wanted to work for him, and so as recently as 30 minutes ago, we're talking about what we were getting ready for this season, but this is my 7th or 8th season working for Troy, and we've both been acquired by Monday Night Football, although Monday Night Football didn't really worry too much about me. I'm easy to acquire. But yeah, joined at the hip with Troy, and to this day. And so that's a super long answer to tell you how insane it is that the biggest villain of my 20s hired me in my 40s to work for him.
And now you're friends.
And now he's one of the nicest guys I have in my life.
No, and he's probably my favorite announcer too. I mean,
He's so good.
Him and Joe are great. I love listening to them.
Yeah, and he works so hard to make sure he's got it on game day, and there's certainly plenty in the broadcast business that, especially famous people, that just kind of show up and wing it.
Yeah,
and he's not that. He's he legitimately wants to make sure that he knows your team as well as you do. And so that's what, I try to help him with. But again, I don't want anyone to think that I help him become that, because he was doing it long before he ever brought me on board. He just wanted to, run up the score, I guess, by making sure every rock is unturned the week of any game he does.
Or the fact that he owned you during the 90s and he still wants to have a hand in a leash on you.
Still owns you.
Yeah.
He believes in charity. So so despite tormenting me in the 90s, he's paying it back.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, and you're still blaming the crest of Cowboy Stadium for Favre.
Dude, the crest in the middle. How are you supposed to throw to the sideline?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
For the listeners, there was a theory back then when Favre played.
It was true. The crest is true for draining.
Texas Stadium, that Favre had an issue with, and I'm a Favre fan too, and I didn't like the Packers, but I love Favre's game, the way he played, his spirit. I mean, it's incredible, but I'm glad the Cowboys,
of course,
stopped him.
Did he ever beat the Cowboys?
Yes, in the 90, but it was up there. He never beat him at Texas Stadium. 90. 96 or so. So the year the Packers finally
Regular
won a
season?
Super Bowl in my lifetime. They came up there, and in fact, that was when Gordon was arrested at Lambeau Field.
That was great.
But,
was it a playoff game or it was regular season?
No, it was late regular season,
Late
but it was cold. It was a day where the Cowboys probably stayed on the bus.
Yeah.
I think that was 96. Yeah, I'm going to say it's 96. Maybe 97 now that I think about it. They're starting to run together, Joe.
Well, it was at the end of the triplets reign.
Well, but at the time, they were still the pick to win the Super Bowl. I mean, the Cowboys, several years after they won their final Super Bowl, everyone's like, the triplets can still do it one
was
more
Switzer
time.
still coaching? He was coaching. Okay.
Yeah. Deion had a pick six that day. I remember.
Did he?
Yep.
Well,
But
they
they didn't score much else.
I listened to a great audio book, Boys Will Be Boys. I know that's a
Jeff Pearlman.
That's a fantastic book about the '90s Cowboys, and I recommend that to the listeners to check that out. That's I read it years ago, and then it finally hit on audio book, and I got in the mood to listen to it. And it's a fascinating book. When Troy Aikman was my favorite quarterback growing up. And not just because he was so good. Even when they drafted him, I was excited because I'd watched him at UCLA, and I knew he was one of the finalists with Rodney Peete and Barry Sanders.
Yep.
And I had his Pro Set rookie card when it came out, which they mass produced those things.
That's
and
right.
They're worthless now. But it was basically Aikman and Elway were my favorite quarterbacks, and and I kind of looked at them. They were similar type, big arms, good looking. Perfect hair, and they look like an NFL quarterback.
And he looked like a cowboy.
He did. No, he looked like a cowboy.
Yeah, he's again. If
he's better shape now than when he played.
Dude, he's ripped.
Yeah, I know.
And he walks around with a gallon of water. He's one of those hydration guys.
I follow him on Instagram. He's
a couple of years ago. He was running up. We were doing carry the load, and he was running up Katy Trail.
Yeah,
and I had to do a double take because it was incredibly ripped. I was surprised by how good a shape.
Well, Favre, same with Favre now. Favre's jacked too.
I don't think he's like Troy though.
No.
Yeah. Troy's pretty careful about what he eats and his workouts, and he's trying to defeat aging. So I wish him well in that. I'm going to sit this one out a little bit, but
he's doing pretty good at it.
Yeah, he's doing great. He's always seemed to land on his feet in life. So so shout out to Troy.
Well, you say you don't want to take credit for his success and his incredible announcing and analyzing games, but he recognized the talent in you.
Well, I got to tell you, Joe, it's an unbelievable honor. I mean, when you talk about all the things that have been cool about your career, there's no question. Very, very high on the list is finding out that not only does Aikman listen to your show, but he thinks you could help him, be on his toes for every game that because that's the thing about his job, and especially when we were doing it for Fox. Last year, I think we did 28 games,
wow,
which is insane. So it's every 3 or 4 days we're doing another game. This year for ESPN, thankfully, it's just Monday night, and so it's 17 plus a playoff game. And so to go from 28 to 18, I'm going to get a lot of hours back in my life, and I know he is, and I think we're both delighted because 2 games a week at the rate that he prepares and the amount of study that goes into it, it was just going to be it couldn't go on like that forever because I don't even travel, and I was exhausted, and so I know the fact that he was, and he travels differently than we do, but
he's
still,
not in coach,
but still, no. I think Air Aikman probably, and
he doesn't have the middle seat.
No, he's seldom in the middle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want to get into your radio. How you started Liberty? I mentioned before the play-by-play announcer, voice of the Flames.
Yeah,
gave you an opportunity.
Yeah,
you were young. How were you?
Oh, geez, sophomore, so 19.
No.
Yeah, and
did you always have this like deep radio voice? I mean, like.
Yeah, probably. It never occurred to me, and my parents say I mumbled all through high school, which is probably true. So you have to learn how to open your mouth when you talk, maybe. And I probably didn't always know how to express myself. So that does take time. I might have had enough in my head at age 15 to have expertise on at least that level, but the ability to communicate and construct cogent thoughts and things like that, and then verbalize them. I assume that takes a lot of at-bats in the minor leagues. And so, yeah, going to Liberty, really, honestly, the thrust of all this was I thought maybe I could play college basketball, and then who knows, maybe you go to Europe and play. I had no idea. I was really good in private school Wisconsin, but again, I had 7 people in my class. We played way, way, way bigger schools, and we did very well because we did have a really good basketball team. But again, being good at basketball in Wisconsin is way different than being good at basketball in Dallas.
Yeah.
Dallas produces lottery picks routinely. I can assure you Wisconsin, and especially Wisconsin private schools, do not. And so once I realized I couldn't play for a living, and it took me probably longer than it should have to realize that, then I wanted to write or broadcast games. And so, yeah, sports talk was barely a thing, so play-by-play seemed to be where I wanted to go. And I remember Jerry Edwards spoke at one of our classes, sports management or communications or something, and basically, as he's given us his spiel as the play-by-play voice of Liberty basketball and football, he said, hey, and if I'm looking for someone to kind of engineer for me for all the games, and I'm like, does this mean you get to travel, to these games, and does this mean we don't have to, we can get food on the road, and all these types of things that you're thinking as a poor college student. This sounds amazing. I get to go on flights, and I get to see cities far away, and I get to be at games, and I get a per diem, even if it's nothing, to go to Subway or Pizza Hut or something and get some meals. And that sounded like the most amazing thing ever. And so I start doing it with him, and he starts learning what a sports nerd I am. And he's like, hey, you want to do pregame and halftime? And then I'm filling in for him doing some games. And then I'm off doing Liberty baseball play-by-play. And, I really thought I would be a play-by-play guy, and I kind of always did. And, honestly, until about 5 or 6 years ago was when I probably gave up my play-by-play dream, because I always had in the back of my head that if the Dallas Stars ever split up radio and TV, maybe I could grab one of those spots, That always, play-by-play of hockey just seemed really cool to me for a number of reasons, not the least of which is it sounds like you get about 5 months off a year where you're not doing anything, and you still can make a living with a nice long April to October summer break. That sounds great, unless we go on a cup run and then it's June to October. That's fine too. The vacation sounds great to me. So, I always thought that I might end up leaving the ticket to go do play-by-play. And then, when they properly hired Dave Strader and then Josh Bogorod, Josh is great. I'm very happy they made the right call. There's no question about it. But I was definitely interested. And so that made it to my mid-40s, still kind of hoping I could do play-by-play someday, because all of us sports nerds want to be at games, and we want to have skin in the game, as they say. We want to feel like, when we're watching games, that the outcome matters. That's why so many have gambling problems, probably, is that, you want to feel the adrenaline kick of something good happening. So yeah, being at an arena and caring if the Dallas Stars win or lose, or FC Dallas I did for a while, and absolutely would have been interested in any of the other local teams, because me with sports, just never happened. And then I got comfortable in my skin doing sports talk, partly because I can be home and be a decent husband and father, hopefully, and kind of gave up that dream, which is usually, I guess, just getting comfortable in your own skin and satisfied with where you are and not worried about conquering a new height. So that's how it all happened.
Were you approached by the powers that be? You said you were interested in that job, but did anybody know you were interested?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Tom Ghilardi had intimated he was interested, as in me being a candidate. So yeah, I think I was a legitimate candidate, and I think they probably thought it would be insane to hire somebody who's never actually had a play-by-play hockey job to start in the big leagues.
Yeah.
Like, people ride the bus in the minors for 10 years to get a shot at a job like that. So
did the ticket people know?
Yes and no. I had floated it to them a couple times, and they were like, they were not interested in me not doing sports radio.
Right.
And so, well, how would this work if you're doing both? And then I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to do both. Right. I just want to do that. And so there was going to be some difficult contortion required to pull it off, but it doesn't mean in the back of my head I didn't think that would be something, not worth pursuing. So I gave it a go, and like I said, they absolutely hired the right guys. But yeah, I mean, at some point, if they would have just asked. Since then, I've probably torpedoed any possibility of that ever happening in the future, because some of my stars' opinions have been a little too hot over there, I understand.
Okay.
But Dan always used to tell me that I would hate doing play-by-play because I like my opinions too much. And if you like having opinions,
Your Twitter ban would say that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, honestly, if you're going to have real critical opinions, not that, you're not trying to get personal and you're not trying to be mean, but you really care about this team and they keep doing these things that are super annoying or that you believe are wrong, and then you say something about it, and they're like, whoa.
Did you work for us?
Yeah, did you happen to see what your paycheck says up there at the top?
Yeah.
Right. You worked for us.
Like George and being the announcer, the PA announcer for the Cowboys back then. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, I look at my friend Mark Followell, and I say, there's a guy with a perfect life. He gets to follow Luka around the country doing basketball games in the NBA. That sounds like just the most fun a broadcaster could ever have. At the same time, he probably can't express all of his opinions because Mark Cuban can react very swiftly if you get too far out of line.
And when he talks to you guys, when he's on those segments, there's sometimes you can tell that.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But he's so good at what he does, but you can still tell.
He's great at navigating.
He
but
does.
he has to navigate.
Okay.
That's part of the deal. You literally work for the team, and the team expects – they can't control the media, but they can control you.
Right.
So – you give something up for any job you take, right? You have to understand the rules of the game, and he accepts them, and I would have accepted them too, but Dan thinks it would have made me ultimately crazy. And honestly, when you hear like Brad Sham do a Cowboys game, I assume Brad Sham has no rules because sometimes he is so grumpy about what the Cowboys are doing right
absolutely.
now, and it's great. Because you were grumpy hearing it. But I've always thought when I hear Brad, there's no way he's scared that Jerry is listening, and he's going to – although Jerry did 86 Dale Hansen once upon a time. So I guess everybody has their limits.
Well, even doing this podcast, Bob, I had to reach out to the city attorneys and for Dallas and say, hey, I'm starting this. It's for the Assist Officer Foundation.
That's right.
What do I need to – be careful of and look out for?
Yeah.
And I have rules too, but it's like things that I wouldn't do anyway, right? I'm not going to go and crap on the department that I work for, and talk about things I'm displeased with.
Well, I would say this. Here's a quick anecdote for you. This happened just yesterday, although yesterday may be a relative term when this actually airs, but so we're talking about a game show on the air yesterday, and the game show's big reward is still $100,000, and I thought that was like a 1960s prize. Like, I feel like we've advanced to where if you're on a big network and you're only giving out $100,000 for the grand prize, that's pretty lame. Like, we're way over $1 million now, and some of these shows are like 5 or 10 million. I mean, come on, it's chump change in TV. And so then the promo is like you divide it amongst the people on the team. And so I am laughing at the fact that it's like 30-some grand a piece, 33 grand a piece, which is basically the price of this tiny car. And I named the name of the car because I just was thinking of name a tiny car that you wouldn't drive probably. And so I named the name, and Corby about lost his mind because it's a sponsor, and we dumped it. And so it never went over the air. But when you talk about offending your bosses, you don't even think about all the commercials you're running. You're just trying to be funny and name a small car that.
It's probably his electric car.
And he's like, no, you can't say that, and he dumped it real fast, and we all had a laugh because the dump button saved us. But it's just.
Well, my dump button is Danny Canetti. He's our SWAT guy that
I
does
was
the
going
sound.
to say, yes. If you're not live, you can at least edit things to make everybody happy. But, we all work for somebody usually.
Of course.
And it's probably best not to anger them too often.
No, because you want to still enjoy the fruits of what that's provided.
College is very expensive, and I have many, many more years of college to pay for.
I have an 8-year-old. So
there you go.
All right, I want to talk about getting into the big leagues. You leave Wisconsin and you come to the big city of Dallas.
Yeah.
And, it's a tail end. We have 3 major sports here.
Right.
We have the big Cowboys, the 4, the Mavs, the Rangers, and the Stars.
Right.
And the Stars were a powerhouse, right, when you got here.
They were the toast of the town.
Is that what essentially brought you here? Because they needed a hockey guy on the radio?
No, but I definitely contorted the world to that end. Like that's very observant in the sense that when I got here, it doesn't take a guy like me long to sort of survey the landscape. And when I got here, I mean, again, the ticket was, any credit.
It was the Yankees. Yeah.
What's that?
It was the Yankees.
Yeah. Any credit I get for ticket success is wrong because I got here and they were already a dominant force. Now maybe I kept the ball rolling a little bit on my own level, but Mike and Greg, George and Craig, Gordon, those guys were absolutely a force of nature when I got here in 1998. So the station had only been on the air 4 years, and these guys are rock stars. Like I couldn't believe it. We'd go places, and it's just like people are going nuts for Grego, and I'm like, who is this guy? Who is this?
Yeah.
But hockey wasn't a big part of it.
No, and that's the thing is the Stars were also rock stars at the time as they worked their way up to 1999, but nobody on the ticket knew anything about hockey,
right?
Except one guy named Rocco Pendola. But Rocco Pendola also made it a point to be as over the top and
bombastic,
in your face, and he made enemies, through the speaker, but he also made enemies at the station. And so he's a very young guy. In fact, he probably set records for like the youngest guy ever to host a sports talk show at the time, like very young, when I think a Buffalo station hired him. And so by the time he got to us, he was still early 20s. And, most of us in our early 20s are pretty annoying humans to begin with. Well, he's got a radio show. He's a successful radio guy at the time. And so he was only in Dallas for like a year. But part of his shtick was how much he loved hockey. Well, he
used to say he'd rather watch a regular season hockey game than Game 7 of the World Series.
Really?
Yeah, okay. I remember him saying that.
Okay,
shit. Yeah.
That's awesome, and I believe it. And so I got here about a year into his deal, and I could quickly tell that he wasn't really part of the clique, part of the team. But I didn't think anything of it because who cares? And trust me, I wasn't terribly shrewd in my observations anyway because everything was a blur to me. I couldn't believe I was at this radio station. I felt like I won a contest, and I immediately got super insecure about how long I could stay and all these types of things. And so I remember I got hired in July, went right to Wichita Falls. I want to say within a week is Michael Irvin stabbing Everett McIver in the neck with the scissors type thing, which never resulted in anything.
Read
no charges,
that
no
book.
Suspensions.
Boys will be boys. They go into that. It's really good.
Well, so we go through the season, and I think that was the year Jake Plummer won at Texas Stadium against the Cowboys, and then that spring, the Stars are going into their cup run. In fact, also that spring was Dirk's first game with the Mavericks after the lockout, like in early February. So this is a pretty cool time to
Heyday.
land at the ticket. And so we go on our first spring break, my wife and I, and we go out to California to see some relatives. And I remember, I guess maybe the first cell phone I ever had, it must have looked like a brick or something, but I get called that Rocco got fired. And I'm on spring break. And I'm like, Rocco got fired? What the heck? And all I could think of is, the Stars are about to go on this massive run. And, you never know, but you knew the Stars were going to have a real chance of winning the Cup. And so this is March, and the Stars win in Buffalo in June. And so for those next 3 months, not only is the hockey guy gone, and I'm still brand new and nobody knows me because I'm 8 to 11 at night. And so I just could not believe this opportunity. And like the station is like, hey, can you do our hockey stuff now? Yeah. Okay. Can you also do Rocco's shift?
Yeah.
What was his shift?
Middays.
Noon to 3.
Noon to 3, that's right.
And I'm like, yeah, I kind of want it. So yes. So I would love to see the hours I worked between March and June because I took every assignment. I often worked noon to 3 and 8 to 11. I would do this weird split shift to take both of our shifts and basically cover the Stars. So in round 2, they played at St. Louis. I was there. In round 3, they played the Avalanche. I was at every game home and away in that series. And then in the finals, I was at Game 6 up in Buffalo. And so somehow I'm going to all these I'm right out of Lynchburg. Like, I am straight out of school. And
So you're 20...
I'm 24. That's
24.
right. And so I am at 26. What am I thinking?
Yeah.
But I'm in St. Louis. I'm in Denver. I'm in Buffalo. I'm at a Stanley Cup parade. All this stuff is happening. I can't believe it. My favorite player growing up was Brett Hull, and he's now the star for the Stars. They just acquired him like a week before I got hired by the ticket, and then a week after it, Dirk is brought in, who at the time really wasn't a star in the story. But it all
and then
just,
he hits the winning,
dude. And I'm just and he scores the game-winning goal in Buffalo, and I'm there, and everybody's looking to me for, hey, how are we supposed to feel about this play? And the Musers are having me on to talk about this, or I'm now their hockey expert. And so I wasn't brought in for hockey, but I became again using
Seemed pretty seamless.
Well, using my youth sports almanac, obsession with every sport really paid off because this opportunity came along. I could have never predicted it, but they needed a hockey guy, and they needed him right now. And I'm like, dude, I love hockey. Let me at it. And so that spring, I feel like if you were to say, all right, what helped this goofball from Wisconsin to basically make the ticket roster and be able to spend maybe most of his life in Dallas talking sports, if I had to say what's the one thing, it might be the ridiculous timing of the Stars Stanley Cup run that took over Dallas's attention. And I just kind of tripped into it because Rocco got himself fired, or it would have been Rocco. I had just been hired, right place, right time, and then seize the moment and run with the ball as far as you can. And so there are people to this day that associate me with the sport of hockey, and I'm flattered. I love hockey, but it all kind of starts back. Like if the Stars would have sucked when I got here and they were irrelevant, that opportunity doesn't exist. But it's blessing, luck,
Stars aligning, right?
Stars aligning.
No
There
pun
you go.
intended.
Yeah. And from that point forward, I had a credibility that I could not have paid for. I could not have bought that anywhere. It just happened. So thank goodness.
My memory of Rocco, I think it was when Walter Payton was having the liver, and isn't he the one that said that? Well, I can't believe people aren't. But he basically said, "I can't believe people aren't running from the hills to donate a liver to Walter Payton."
I believe
he only got one liver.
I believe he had. I think he had kidneys and liver mixed up.
Yeah, so it was.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Oh, I remember that. What I remember most is this stupid toenail thing. I think is what
Yeah.
put him over the top.
Yeah, and you know, he was inspired by Howard Stern, and
Yeah, shock jock.
and everybody who is inspired by Howard Stern needs to remember they're not Howard Stern, and
Yep.
so
He can do things others can't.
the old I could fart on the air and you guys will think I'm a genius bit is not for everyone, but I believe Rocco might have said that. So
Well,
thank goodness for his decision making. Really opened the door for me.
yeah. Well, too bad people didn't come running from the hills of livers to pass
I've
out.
said enough dumb
Yeah,
things,
Yeah.
so I won't.
No,
knock
I
on it
never
too
heard
hard.
nothing like that. Anyway, you asked earlier how we met.
Yeah.
You said your wife was asking, how did you and Joe meet? So we met. I approached you at a ticket event.
Okay.
I believe it was a Guys Night Out. It was right before you started Bad Radio. You had already got the gig, but it hadn't got going yet.
Okay,
And I think Dan had already been put in place. Everything was.
so this is that same spring of '99.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it was the Stars' heyday.
Yes.
I approached you, and I had heard that you like doing ride-alongs.
Yes.
Okay. And at the time, my partner John over here, he was Valdez. He was my partner.
Yeah.
And we did nothing but chase dope at Southeast, right? And I approached you and said, "Hey, if you ever ridden at Southeast?" You said no. I said, I had a pager at the time.
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
and
Sweet.
also very sweet. And email. I gave you that. We exchanged information. A couple of weeks later, we set up a ride along.
That's right.
I went and picked you up from the ticket office, and I was kind of limping that day because the day before we had fought a guy at 2805 East Ledbetter, and Klingelsmith and I were fighting this guy, and all three of us fell down the stairs while holding on to this guy, and so we rolled down the stairs at 2805 Ledbetter. John's shaking his head because John hates my memory.
So we rode together forever, but I don't have a memory. Like, he's always like, John, do you remember this? I don't know. Hey, do you remember this? No. Somebody come up to me, hey, Joe said this. Do you remember? I'm like, no. I just don't have the memory.
I have a stupid like your sportsman.
Yeah.
I have a dumb memory. I can remember picking you up in the elevator, riding down from the ticket. We go out to the squad car.
Okay.
And then we go meet up with at Southeast, and we sit in detail. Sergeant Landry, shout out David Landry, he listens.
Yeah.
He was up there calling roll call, and you brought us some ticket swag. You brought us
Okay.
some T-shirts, and you brought him a T-shirt too, and he called your name out in detail, and we thought it was really cool. We go out, and we leave. We go get a drink, and then we drive over to Royal Crest Apartments, John. Remember that? And we go jack up a known suspect, last name Beasley. We knew him.
Okay.
I remember we were just, I don't know if it's not bragging, but we were just talking about how everybody's got guns. We're talking how bad. We're trying to build it up.
Yeah.
And I remember we just jump out on this guy. No clue he would, but sure enough, man, he had a freaking pistol on him, and we were just talking it up to make you think that, and he really had one.
I was incredibly amazed at how it seemed like there were a lot of people who were armed that we would happen upon.
Well, we're going to get into more of the armed, but I remember you got out the apartment. That was one of the most deadly apartments there in Oak Cliff on the southeast side. It was bad. We get out, we jack him up, and John's talking to him. I'm over talking to his buddy. You're just kind of milling around, standing there watching us, and all of a sudden John grabs Beasley, puts him down on the hood. Don't move. And John reaches around, pulls out a pistol. I then get his buddy down on the ground, and we do our thing. And we ended up going to jail because he was a felon. And
we deal with that dude all the time.
Oh yeah, he was a frequent flyer. But I remember you were just like, wow. We just left the station, so we go and we eat. We go and do the jail process, and then we leave and we go to TGI Fridays at West End. I don't know if you remember that. So we go to West End.
Yep.
And I remember distinctly the hot sports opinion you threw out, and I got excited by this. It didn't come to fruition, but you said we were sitting there talking about sports, and you go, "Yeah, I got one for you." real arrogantly. No, I'm just kidding. You go, "I got one for you. I think John Elway's coming back." And I was like, yeah, I could see that. Yes, he went out with 2 back-to-back Super Bowls.
Yeah.
He still got it. Terrell Davis is still there. But I remember you sitting back in your chair at TGI Fridays and saying, "I got one for you. I think Elway's coming back." In my mind, I was excited because I liked Elway so much. And I was thinking, this man, he's got inside sports knowledge.
Yeah, isn't that
so
something?
It's got to be right. So anyway,
But it's definitely not.
well, no, sadly,
Man,
I remember that.
That's great. I'm happy you do, because I can't remember ever feeling that way. But that's awesome. And here's the other thing: is shoot or shoot, and we always forget the ones we miss.
Yeah,
But thankfully we
you've hit on a lot. But
well,
I remember that because I was so excited to hear that because I was wanting that to happen.
I built you up.
Yeah. Well, we leave TGI Fridays and we go meet up with the guys, and that's when the real fun starts.
Yes.
We met up with the old 3080 crew: Mike Modest, Scott McDonald, Bricker, Pat Starr was there, Klingel Smith.
Was Mark Terry there? Or had he already gone by then?
Mark Terry was there. Yes, and I know I can't remember if Jaime was there. Castro. I'm trying to give all shout outs to the people that were there. And part of it, Kirk Carroll was there. Kirk Carroll was in plain clothes. And our first order of business was to all pile in a gray Astro van.
Yes, we did.
And Kirk Carroll was driving. Bob was in the front passenger. Y'all both were in plain clothes, and we were in the back of the Astro van like a Trojan horse.
That's right.
All in full uniform.
I'll never forget this.
Yes. It was great.
So funny.
So we go over to this street called Symbol. It's in Pleasant Grove. And at the time, this was like a little mini war zone on this street. ATF actually had to come over to that street a few years later and basically shut the street down because it was that bad. It was like a street on the wire.
Yeah.
Right? So we're driving up, and there's two guys on the corner, and Bob's in the passenger seat, and we tell Bob, hey, roll down the window and ask for a 50, like just $50 rock for the listener.
Yeah.
Which is a sizable rock to buy right there. So
Right.
Bob cracks the window like 2 inches.
Boy, I don't doubt that.
Yeah, and you drive up, and one guy comes walking over to you from the bush.
Yeah.
And as soon as he got to the window, we pile out of the side. The sliding door slides open, and we jump out on top of him.
Yeah, he did a little panic dance.
Panic
for
dance.
a moment, yeah.
Crack
He was
goes
scared
up
as you were.
Oh, yeah.
Crack goes up in the air, and
Yeah.
we put them down, and you were sitting there watching us pick crack rocks out of the bushes. I remember you going, sweet. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. I remember. Things are moving really fast, and that's one of the things that I recall from the entire experience. Is at no point is there like a let's all stop and collect our thoughts here and explain. Like you guys, and I was very happy about this. You guys kind of just put me right into it, and didn't really explain. I didn't really have time to be nervous, sort of thing, And again, there must have been 10 people in the van, but you could only see 2 of us. And so when I got instructions, I didn't have time to think how insane this is that I'm actually the one approaching the guy.
Trying to buy dope?
Because
That would not happen now.
I have to believe that probably was blurring the lines of a normal ride-along protocol.
Yeah, a little bit.
But but regardless, I was honored to be part of an operation, and it felt pretty awesome.
We were young and dumb, and we were trying to impress also.
Yes.
Well,
Whenever
as long as nobody gets hurt, we're all happy.
Yeah. Hey, it worked out fine. It didn't make the news with the local radio.
Yes.
Local radio star.
Yeah, just
killed by dope.
AM at the time.
I remember when
we weren't even FM yet.
Just AM. Yep.
I remember listening to you talk about it later, and you didn't get into a lot of details. So we didn't want, but I remember you saying something to the effects like, "Let me tell the listeners, there is no shortage of narcotics and guns in Dallas." You said something along those lines.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I've done a lot of ride-alongs with family. All the father-in-law, brothers, and so forth. So I'll go up there and we'll ride along, and it's just a different deal. It's certainly not the same types of calls. It's it's traffic accidents and things like that, and so for this one to basically be everything you think it might be, and with drugs and with weapons and so forth, and you're just like, this is This is wild. And I don't know, was it the first or the second where we hit one of those hotels?
That was the same night.
It was right after we got done with Symbol. So basically the team, some parts of the team take those two knuckleheads to jail and book them in. We get back in the van and we travel to the very elegant, very beautiful Lucky Motel at 2740 Lucky out in Cigarette Heights.
Cigarette Heights, yeah.
And it's since burned down since we've hit it.
R.I.P.
We're doing R.I.P. to Lucky Motel and all the filth that has gone through there. Well, we're doing surveillance on a certain door on the backside. We have guys dropped off. We drive up in the van. They deploy. They go over the fence and they're doing surveillance through a wooden fence.
Yeah,
and they're literally 20 yards from the door watching through this fence, and they're seeing people come and go like it's like an ant farm, right? You know, they're coming, they're busy, they're working.
Yeah.
Buyer goes in. We tell you and the other units to pull up around the backside. And so basically, you stay. I will say you were not in harm's way at this time. We didn't want you to try to buy dope again because we were successful. We want to push it.
Right.
So you were in the van and we bail out and you meet our guys meet the buyer as he's leaving out and the dealer's right there. So we there's a scuffle. We put him down and these apartments these motels are what 300 square foot inside and maybe a filthy mattress. I mean, there's not
the
much.
hourlies.
The hourly, yeah. And they might they might rent by the 10 minutes in that place. Yeah. So we go in and there's a bunch of crack and again, I remember us doing our kind of little sweep. Well, Bob walks in. Bob takes a look behind the door and he sees a pump shotgun. And I remember you just go, "Hey, you got a shotgun over here." it was so great.
Well, yeah. So I want to revise the story slightly because, as I recall, it might have been you two are back looking in the bathroom for something, maybe around the toilet, and it wasn't behind the door. But I swear to you, I've seen the thing in movies a few times where it's between the mattresses.
Oh yes, that's right.
And so
you got a shotgun over here.
So I'm looking around the hotel room and I'm like, if I was a gun, where would I be? Of course, they'd be between the mattresses. So I walk over and I pick it up with, it's a light little flimsy mattress. It's definitely not a typical one. Lifted it up with one arm and I'm like, I can't believe it's a freaking shotgun right where I thought it would be. Like, it's exactly where
You're already
I thought
thinking
it would
like
be.
a cop.
Yes, I mean, this is the most basic.
That deep voice, hey.
I didn't know what to do with it. He said it so cool. They got a shotgun. Like, well, hell yeah. We high-fived him. We actually took a picture with one of those crappy wind-up Kodak cameras with you holding that shotgun. I don't know where it's at, man. I would too. There's a lot of pictures.
Have that one?
No, man. I would have loved to have that picture. It was, a
couple of other pictures from back then that we'd like to have.
Yeah, there's a lot of there. I used to carry around those little disposable cameras.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the people in Eckridge that I used to, they probably raised some eyebrows when they looked at some of these photos. But yeah, that was fun, man.
Oh, it really was.
All total, we had 7 felony arrests that night as a group, and yeah, it was. I mean, I took you back to the ticket mothership and dropped you off and
just buzzing.
Oh
just
yeah,
like, I can't believe this is real.
Yeah, it was a great night because sometimes you have ride-alongs and nothing happens. And even in the worst part of Dallas, it just sometimes it doesn't work out for you.
Yeah,
you rode again in 2007 with me.
Okay,
and
this one was crazy.
Yeah, we had fun too. I'm gonna get into that. Kind of show we did different things. It wasn't as successful arrest wise because there was a lot of people that had called in that day, and I was apologizing because it was a slow day.
And I'm like, dude,
comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
And I was gone.
Yeah, John was gone. John was a robbery detective, I believe. All the old crew was kind of gone by the 2007, and it was me, and I had a new young crew. I had. Emerson, Rivera, Rowden, had a bunch of young guys, and we go out and we hit a couple of other houses, and I showed you some things like there was a back door that had a window half open, and then you see a camera like down almost on the ground, like by the porch, shining up, like showing up at the that window,
right?
And there was a buzzer back there at the back window,
Yep.
And But one of the highlights is we did surveillance of a dope house. And so basically we get dropped off in a wooded area, and we had to work our way up to this. It was a really wooded area of Oak Cliff. It was over off Arrow. Remember that street, Arrow? Heavily wooded. We go up there, and we get too close to the dope house. We're like really close. We see a car come up, and you and I both had to duck down. Yeah. And you know, Bob is a large, bald, white guy. Yeah, he's easy to spot. I'm in uniform. I'm short, but we're two white guys out in Oak Cliff sneaking up on a house.
Yeah.
And we're radioing information back to the squad cars that were parked several blocks away. We're kind of quarterbacking them in to take action.
Right.
Well, the dope dealer, I don't know he comes walking out on a cell phone, and he's looking up and down the street. I don't know if somebody said something, but
yeah.
So Bob and I both had to literally lay down in the dirt on our stomachs.
100%.
Yeah. While this guy. So what was going through your head whenever we're out there?
Yeah. So I'm definitely on my chest, and I'm definitely like looking through, leaves to try to get a vision through the trees, and again, we're not far at all.
Yeah.
And what's going through my head right now is, maybe I should have asked for a vest.
Yeah.
And what happens if this guy, heads this way? What exactly is my play? Like I feel like, being someone who communicates for a living, I have been able to talk myself out of certain situations in life. But this would be so far beyond anything I've attempted to do. It's like, looking for, a watch I lost over here. So, like, what would you even say? So, and by the way, they may not be interested in a conversation.
No.
They might be interested in clearing the area at your expense. So I remember definitely feeling my pulse racing a little bit there, that I was perhaps touching a stove that was a little too hot for my liking that time, and I was very happy to get picked back up.
Yeah, well, my command staff probably would, but I could talk about these right along now because the command staff are long gone.
Yes,
and it all worked out well.
It all worked out. We have nice stories. We're doing a podcast.
Yeah, we're doing a podcast now. I would not that I had a podcast. Podcast didn't exist back then.
But I remember thinking at the time, I can never say anything about this because I think we probably flew a little close to the sun that day.
No, we did. Well, you know what's funny is you did a segment on it, and I still have it recorded into that segment you and Donnie did.
Okay,
I still have it. So it was on Battery Radio.
I was being really vague, though, right?
You were being very vague, but we talked about it, and you said that you had to get down on your stomach, and and Donnie asked him, was it like Saving Private Ryan? Was you like keep you in my hip the whole way? And it was really funny. Like wherever I go, you go.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they asked you if you had a vest. So.
Dude, it was wild.
It was fun. That was kind of that's part of it. We did that. I can't tell you how many times we low crawled, snuck up, literally feet away from people, and having to hide like. Cops. It is literally playing cops and robbers.
Yeah, and there's a element to all of this because I've probably gone on a dozen ride-alongs in my life, but only I think with you down here. I think I might have done
You rode with my partner Chris Webb.
Yeah, you know what?
We rode at Southwest.
Yeah, that's right. Okay,
and we didn't do shit that night because there was nothing going on. It was a very dead night, but it was more in the fall because it was darker.
Yeah, and so. But in all these cases, the goal is to be the fly on the wall, and so you're kind of experiencing what you guys deal with. But it's also to be a fly on the wall and not have any role in anything that happens. I'm very thankful for those experiences. It was great, and I kind of wish we could do them again sometime. But it's again it scratches the itch of I think a lot of people could benefit, and I know that's the purpose of the ride-alongs in the first place, was to sort of show citizens what it's really like. And I don't know if they exist on really any level anymore, but I definitely know it's important for people to kind of get a feel for what you guys are all about, because the perception at times isn't great. For law enforcement, and I totally get the complex nature of those things, but at the same time, man, it's it's real dudes, and certainly ladies, of course, but doing a lot of good work out there, and doing a lot of noble causes, and it doesn't get talked about hardly at all, and that's a shame.
And it was fun.
Yeah, man,
it was fun.
Yeah.
Well, the name of this podcast is Bridging the Divide, and we realize the divide. We have a divide in our own departments. And the citizens, we want to reach out and speak to the non-police,
right.
the non-firemen, the non-military, that to help better understand our experiences and our downfalls, and also our recoveries. And officers do the best they can. There's some people that do not deserve to wear the uniform and the badge. We know that, and we want them taken out of play as well.
Sure,
right? But it's the same with every profession.
So it's absolutely the same with every profession, and there's plenty of guys in the media world that I really wish didn't represent what I do, because they don't do what I do. They go about things in a less than flattering way, and so it's like that in every profession. At the same time, some are absolute lightning rod professions, and there's no question law enforcement is in the spotlight. I will always say, given my personal experience, there's so many great men and women who are, this is their calling, this is their cause, this is, how they feel like they're leaving society in a better place than where they arrived, and that's the type of thing I would like to focus. And of course, if I had $1 for every time somebody said one bad apple, blah blah blah, I get it, but at the same time, we kind of owe it to each other. Especially in conversations like these, we owe it to each other to not paint with a broad brush, any more than we have to, and that's why I think it's important, even when it's not popular, to be willing to, defend the huge majority that are absolutely trying to do things the right way and trying to do the best they can. And then the other thing is just a simple empathy of understanding, what the type of pressures, and I don't mean pressure from the media or pressure from the populace for your conduct or anything like that. I'm talking about the pressure of literally not knowing if you're going to be shot or safe or something like that. I think that's something else that we on the outside probably need to have a better understanding of, is like, how would your job change, and how would your general attitude to circumstances change if there was a real possibility that you could come in harm's way during this next 8-hour shift, and so,
or you have to take a life, or you have to do that.
Yes, and so there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, and most of the time, it's just easier to paint with a broad brush, some ridiculous position, and just pretty much throw everybody in the same basket. And I realize that saves time, but it's not right.
It gets you likes and shares if you say certain things and take a stance, and it gets you some hashtags. But it's a tough. I mean, it's anybody can be involved in a car accident on the way to work, and that's when their life is over, right? But officers, they go to work, and firefighters, military, they go to work knowing there's a very good chance they're not coming home to their family. Their family is having to pick up the pieces after the fact. And then even another, we had the great Lance Crawford on here, and he talked about the thought of having to take a life of another person. There's no officer that wants to go out and kill anybody. There is a mental, that the officers that have to take lives and even get into a shooting where they have to shoot somebody where they don't die, they have to live with that mentally forever.
Yeah.
John's been involved in 2 shootings himself, and it's, John. I mean,
he could probably speak better about the mental aspect of that than what we do. Can.
Yeah, it's tough. I've been on almost 27 years, and I don't know any officer that goes out wanting to one of these things to happen. But when they do happen, though, it's tough, man. It's weird. I mean, you got the pressure from your colleagues of whether you did right or how you messed up, from the person the family that's involved, who you shot. Then you have to go through the investigations, and there's always going to be people that think that you're such a bad person. There's no way you should have done that. So it's tough, man. Nobody. I promise you, there's nobody. I don't know of any cop that wants to shoot somebody.
Well, to me, and you always say, well, how would what are solutions as opposed to just complaining about everything? I don't know. I don't know how ultimately we get to the destination we want to get to, because obviously there are a number of unfortunate and just flat out wrong incidents involving law enforcement that nobody is proud of. I think though one thing that I remain optimistic about is it does feel in my lifetime we've gone from almost laughing at anybody who admits a mental frailty or hey, I'm not okay right now, I'm not feeling good, I think it's trite to say it this way, but it's okay not to be okay sort of cliche that's out there now that sort of recognizes mental battles. I don't even know how to define mental illness or anything like this, but I do know that part of everyday life for us, for our high school kids, for certainly people in law enforcement or people in the military or anything like that, I do think that if anything good has come out of the last several years, it's sort of a recognition that it doesn't make you soft to kind of feel like you're dealing with something that you'd like to talk about with somebody, that sort of thing. And I can't imagine the mental battles of being out on the streets sometimes, and just what that would do to your perception of what the populace is like. If the only people you come in contact with on the course of time act in a certain way or believe in certain things, then that has to color your thought process of what it's just how our brains our brains use probabilities all the time subconsciously to determine friend, foe, good, evil. It's our brain doing calculations, right? And so I have to think that just like if I'm always surrounded by professional athletes, I might get an idea of what a normal human is capable of physically, which is ridiculous because they're professional athletes. They are not indicative of, so I do think with all of us, and not to ramble in 50 directions here, but I do think as men in particular, for us as a group to sort of be willing to at least entertain the possibility of vulnerability, between the ears, is not a sign of weakness or it's like a sign of like, God, dude, it's all right. It's all right to have your head spinning a little bit. Take a little time, see this person talk. Yeah, I think that has to help in your profession. I think it has to help in every profession. Like I said, our kids not going to school for a couple years and just kind of living in their own phone and in their own heads, and without human interaction. I think it all takes a toll. So I don't know if that makes as much sense as I want it to, but I always think that there are certain professions where mental wellness would really, really, really be vital, and I have to think law enforcement's really high on that list.
We're getting better at it. Joe is part of a new program, but the ATO, that's one of the things that, since I've been working with the ATO and DPA for the past almost 10 years now, our expenses for the counseling program that we have has grown exponentially, and I've mentioned a lot of time on here. cops are using it, people are using it, the family using it. Now, I don't know if it's because the people are knowing to use it now or circumstances that have happened in the past decade have brought that on, but it's getting used and officers are getting help and getting better, and we still have a long way to go because cops are still making mistakes off duty that if they would seek help, they probably could have gotten some better therapy than the alcohol therapy or other therapy that they're using to get through the day and not getting the proper help. But we're getting better at doing that.
Yeah. I mean, young officers are probably full of optimism on how the world's going to change and how I'm going to, always be able to make things better out there. And then I imagine over the course of a career, it's just natural to at times become a little jaded, and I think that mental maintenance is probably a big role in attempting to normalize or regulate that. Maybe is probably the term.
It's more in officers and any first responder, and everybody really, any traumatic incident that happens or just the seeing a dead body, not even getting to shoot them, but seeing a dead body all the time.
100%.
We compartmentalize things and we just move on to the next because there's always the next.
Yes.
We have to put it in a box and put it behind us. But people don't always manage those boxes that are left behind very well. They don't stack them nice and neat in the garage, right? And that's where counseling would come in and basically show them how to manage what they have compartmentalized. And the Dallas PD, we were just starting up a new a wellness unit. And I've been fortunate enough to have been selected to be a part of that. It's called the OWL Initiative, the Officer Wellness Longevity Initiative. We got a cool logo and everything, and we are going to be taking a proactive approach with our officers and even the non-police. We have a lot of civilians that go out and process crime scenes that see dead infants, dead bodies, and mutilated bodies from crashes. They have to go out and process these scenes as civilians. We're not really the training and the visual experiences that we go through. So it's tough on everybody, but we're going to try with this new initiative to at least steer the ship in a right direction or a better direction.
That's great because, again, to circle it back to what I do, there are times where you feel, like you're argumentative, social media or just all this stuff, and you can feel like it's changing how you feel and where your head's at, and that's definitely not happening upon a 1% of the nonsense you guys have to see and deal with. And nonsense is a bad word, but you get what I'm saying.
No, we deal with a lot of nonsense too. Yeah.
Twitter is not real life, and it can still mess with your head. So I have to imagine this career in particular is one that you have a lot to deal with.
Bob, I want to get into another topic with you. First responders, military, we throw around the phrase saving a life. Right, in which we do. We save many lives. Mm-hmm. But saving a life can mean many different things. It could be putting on a tourniquet of somebody that's been shot. It could be dragging somebody out of a house that's on fire. It could also mean some of the people we arrest, maybe that arrest, giving them a wake-up call.
Right.
That makes them turn their life around, right?
Yeah.
Or it could mean putting somebody in a better situation and in better circumstances for them to have a better quality of life for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
I want to get into something that I believe that you save lives, okay? And you're very strong in your faith, and you had a mission trip to Guatemala. Can you talk about that and what that led to?
Yeah. We there's probably a time in everyone's life where they kind of look around and they say, so what's the point of all this? Like, what are, you're in a beautiful SUV and you just bought a $6 coffee and you're driving along and you're a little beaten by the rat race and you're kind of wondering, so what's the point? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Especially in my case, if you have a brother who's actually, in the Army and also a chaplain and a pastor, and you're like, okay, so he's doing that, and we're laughing at fart drops on the air, and just, it's like, am I really doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And so with that epiphany, I guess I was looking for things like 2005, and a couple guys at church told me to go to Guatemala with them for 4 days and just kind of see the mission trip. And I could talk for an hour about just that, but long story short, it changed my life just to see what poverty truly is all about. Like, we have U.S. poverty, and I'm not here to make light of it, but there's also world poverty where, these kids are basically in an orphanage that's in a junkyard, and I'm not even making that up. And I mean, it's just, you're like, this is crazy, like an orphanage in a junkyard. Like, what are we talking about here? And so you see that, and you see the little differences you can make. And we would take shoes down to them, and we'd play soccer with them, and that turned into another mission trip and another and another. And I went to Guatemala, I think 8 or 10 times, in the Dominican Republic, and one time we took our wives, and so Sally's with me down there, and we're just like, man, I feel like maybe we could be doing more, but I don't know what it is. And she said, maybe we should think about adopting. And we're like, well, we already got 2 kids, and we got the perfect family, boy, girl, whole situation. I don't know. It seems kind of crazy, but we went down that road and tried to do Guatemala, and it ended up closing international adoptions in Guatemala because of some complex reasons. And thankfully, though, Honduras opened up shortly thereafter, and that's how we met our son, who we adopted at the age of 4 in 2011. And we lived in Honduras for about 8 weeks, and that changed our life. And so, when you talk about adoption, those of us who are strong in the faith, we kind of consider ourselves adopted by God. So to pay that forward in our own family situation, that is something that we felt called to do.
That I know was a big process, and you talked about it on air, and
very much.
Yeah, can you just briefly describe how tough that was of a process for you?
Well, yeah, it's very involved.
You were literally there 8 weeks for the adoption.
Yeah, because you take custody, but then you can't leave the country until he has a U.S. visa, and so there's a number of things you have to do. And honestly, if people are into adoption, I would never tell you domestic versus international, what's the right call for you. But I would say that domestic is way easier. And so, we felt called because my wife's family to help out a Spanish-speaking orphan and from a Spanish-speaking country, and that's just how we roll. We feel like again, her dad swam the Rio Grande to get here, and it just felt it felt meaningful to us to attempt to minister to Latin America and in that sort of setting, and not just in adoption, but in our giving, in our mission trips, and whatever we do. And that's why I have such a heart for the immigration issues that our state and our country deals with. It's just because, behind every immigrant, legal or illegal, is a human being. And as far as I'm concerned, now, absolutely, we have to be smart about things, and we can't, let bad people and bad intentions in. But at the same time, the God I believe in does not really care about the borders we've drawn on our maps to decide this is our land and this is your land. Well, God made it all, as far as I'm concerned. And from that, I have to count a human life as a human life, here, there, somewhere, and I realize there's a lot of pride in being born in Texas or born an American, but I don't think God cares about that. I think God cares about, each and every soul, and I think we're told in the Bible to make sure we're taking care of the widows and the orphans in particular, and the poor, and so that's been something that's been very important to us, whether it be our clothing drives or mission trips or adoption or whatever is we God's taking good care of me. There's no question. I'm very fortunate, and I would hate to think that my entire life was about comfort and possessions that aren't really going to last anyway. And so, the idea, although I don't always practice what I preach, I suppose the idea is to make a difference in lives, and I can't imagine, a bigger difference than adopting a young man who will be your son for the rest of your life. So that was a adventure we were leery of, and it had some reservations on how it was going to affect our family and how it was going to change everything. And certainly you can have a lot of thoughts in your head, just like if you're laying on your chest, across from a drug house. There's a lot of things in your head that can say what could go wrong here, and that's the same with living in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, for 8 weeks. But God is good, and we survived all of it, and here we are today. And our family, let me tell you, that dude is unbelievable, and that our youngest son Justin, he's got a heart of gold, and God could have given us any child on the face of the earth to add to our family, and we would have tried to accept any of those terms, and he gave us just a dynamite kiddo that hopefully God has big plans for.
Well, Bob, you say he has a heart of gold. You have a heart of gold, and you and your family does. I mean, you saved a life. You put a human being in much better circumstances, and you gave him an avenue that a lot of orphans still right now don't have that opportunity. And for y'all to go do that, I can't tell you how. When I was listening to that story on the ticket, and your experience, I mean, it gets you teary-eyed thinking about that, somebody doing that because you didn't have to do it.
Well, it's one of the greatest rewards is hearing that people were listening to those segments and they actually decided to go adopt themselves. And it's not for everyone, but a lot of us have been blessed with homes and lives and careers that are far beyond our wildest projections and dreams when we were growing up. Like, holy cow, if I could someday make $50,000 in a year, that would be the best. I'd sign up for that. 18-year-old you has all these thoughts on what a blessing would be, and then somehow you end up living your dream life, and you just have to think it's not all about you. It's all about what you can do with that to make things around you better. And if I think that's what it's all about. I guess I don't pretend to know what it's all about, but I think that's what it's all about.
It sounds like he blessed you every bit as much as you blessed him.
Well, it's yes.
If the listener could see the smile on his face right now, they would know that he was blessed that as much as.
It's the best decision we ever made. He's unbelievable, even if he's loud when we're recording.
He's fine. Even as untensioned it is, we've had a lot of people talk about their faith when bad things have happened. So I'm glad you've talked about that. You want to give a plug to your clothes drive too, your website, or if you got that, you want to throw that out there for us?
Yeah, well, we will do another version of Drop Your Pants September 13th. So I guess depending on when this drops, this might still be ahead of it. And we do it for the Cornerstone Clothes Closet, which Cornerstone is a great ministry down by Fair Park, and we absolutely love Pastor Chris Simmons and that gang. And so they have a clothing closet. And briefly, years ago, my wife had our family go down there and serve, and we were amazed at what they do with the homeless and with the impoverished folks of the area and so forth. And of course that continues to be a big deal in our city is trying to take care of the people that have a hard time right now fully taking care of themselves. And we were amazed that day to find that almost all of the men's pants were out of stock. Like, there's too many. And so if you were like a 28 waist or a 44 waist, they might be able to help you, but anything in between, the shelves were bare. And I remember saying, I broadcast every day to a couple 100,000 men, and odds are their waists are somewhere between 28 and 44 in many cases, and I bet, like me, they have 10 pairs they haven't worn in ever. What if we could get those in this clothes closet? So that was like 9 years ago, and it's happened over and over and over again. Now, because of COVID, we're doing more of a cash drive, and we were expecting it was going to change this year, but now we're not so sure, and I think we're going to stay online cash again this year probably to try to raise money so that our people can go buy wholesale jeans. But by next year, 2023, we'd like to believe we're back to getting people to clean out their closets as well. So you can find plenty more at theticket.com.
Bob, thank you so much for being a true servant. The city of Dallas is lucky to have you and your talents. You entertain so many, but then you're much more beyond just a radio voice and just a sports nerd. And I hope the listener hears that. They understand what a great human being you are, and I can't thank you enough for sitting down with our little podcast.
Well, that's awesome. I'm honored, and I can't thank you enough for your friendship and for the stories, guys. It was great to relive the good old days and picking up the mattress and finding the surprise, and it was fun to hang out with you guys today. And keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, we are thankful for the service to our city and so forth that you guys are called to.
Thank you, Bob.